Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. You like that? 1, 2, 3. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Purple Daily on draft. It is the start of NFL free agency. We're well aware of what's going on, and full disclosure, we're even taping this the day before just to give you a little Purple Daily on draft fix as free agency opens, and Purple Daily will be kind of locked and loaded for anything that does happen. So Purple Daily on draft will still happen right now and today. We're going to go over some great draft prospects and listener prospects that have been sent over. We'll also do a mock draft, so we'll get into a very draft-heavy episode here, but then stay tuned on Purple Daily for other breaking news that happens with Mackie Judd, myself, etc. We'll be excited to have that. But yes, Purple Daily on draft with Miles and Tyler and myself here will still happen. So, boys, let's get into this here. Here's what I've decided to do. Here's what we've decided to do, I should say. I've taken some of the prospects that listeners have sent over the last few weeks, put it into a little list for both you guys to kind of go over which fits could be good for the Vikings. And then also, we'll do a mock draft sim from PFF on the back end of this as well. So, let's start here because there's a good amount of steam that I have found on a lot of these guys, but I felt like the most recent one I found was Braden Fiske. So, Forno, you said you were able to kind of get your hands on a lot of different these, or at least watch a lot of these type of guys that will go out over here today. But Braden Fiske, where does this guy stand with the Vikings? Is this a fit for the Vikings, and where do you think he could be projected in the draft?
Fiske's really interesting because he's 24 years old, only played at Florida State for 2 years, and being a sixth-year senior, you're not expecting him to show a ton of progression once you get to the National Football League. In essence, you're getting closer to a finished product than you would be if you're drafting somebody who's 21, just because as far as their development curve is going, they're much closer to the top than you would potentially want. So for me, theoretically, that would kind of lower my viewpoint of the player. And that's just in a vacuum. Everybody's different. But Fiske really blossomed once he got to Florida State. Incredible quickness. And that athleticism showed at the scouting combine. But there are some issues. Mainly his T-Rex arms. Only 31-inch arms is incredibly abnormal for an interior guy. It's not necessarily as big of a deal as it is with edge rushers because guards and centers naturally have shorter arms. You're talking like 32 to 33-inch arms. So, I mean, you're still losing that reach advantage, and that matters a lot. I thought once he got engaged with blockers that he wasn't able to really disengage very well, do that a lot of that stack and shed. And I thought his pass rush playing could be a little bit more cohesive because I thought he relied way too much on that quickness and athleticism, which works. But if that doesn't work, you got to have a backup plan, and you have to be able to react quickly. And I don't think he has that. And to me, he's a high-end third-round player. Like, okay, if the Vikings had their third-round pick, which I believe would be, I think, 75 or 74, yeah, I would highly consider it. But some people are talking like end of the first round, beginning of the second. We all knew he was fast. We all knew he was quick. You don't double count that kind of athleticism. You knew it was there, and maybe you tick him up a little bit. I made adjustments on probably like 10 players when it came to the combine because I wanted to be able to answer some questions I had on the film. And then their athletic testing really answered those for me. So for me, Fiske's a third-round guy, good player, but I don't think he's ever going to be that game changer that I think some are maybe making him out to be. And I think you're going to see his stock kind of not fall, but just come back down to earth after that great combine he had.
Yeah, Miles, athletic score, he was number one for defensive tackles. He graded pretty off the charts in terms of an athletic guy, but he's also older. So I guess how much do you balance? Like, is the age thing a bigger problem for you, or is that not an issue? Where do you kind of have the Vikings and Fiske being a fit for them in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, he's a grown-ass man at the combine. So
yeah.
I think kind of like what Forno said, I just don't think there's a lot more like obviously everybody has room to develop. I'm not saying he can't develop, but like how much more development is there in his game at this age and at his athleticism and strength? Kind of like a Garrett Bradbury situation to me. It's like, you get a guy in, he's older, you get him in the NFL, and you're like, oh man, maybe he'll get stronger in the NFL. But when a guy's 24, 25 as a rookie, you don't have a long time to wait for that guy to kind of get up to speed and strength. Like that's kind of, he's either going to have it or he's not. And I think that's going to be harder at the next level for him, especially if he gets like double teams and some of those engaged blocks. He uses his athleticism, but the offensive linemen in the NFL have a lot more athleticism than they do in college. So I worry that he's not going to be able to just utilize his athleticism to win all the time at the next level. And he's not a huge, big, stout type of dude either. So there isn't that like crazy strength. Like Aaron Donald, like we talk about like testing at the combine. Aaron Donald tests like a freak too. But Aaron Donald's like, that dude is a monster freak strength wise, not just athletic, but that dude's like he'll bench press, 500 pounds. Like that, Fiske isn't doing that. And I'm not saying he has to be that to be effective at the next level, but he doesn't have that as like an offset to some of his athleticism. It's kind of more of a true weakness of his. And so I worry about that at the next level for him. And I agree, I wouldn't take him in the first 2 rounds at least. I see him like if the Vikings, with one of their 109, their first 4th round pick, I'm cool with that. Like they need D-line depth. He's athletic. I think there's ways to like utilize him. But I don't view him as like a must have. You got to get this guy at all costs in the first, couple days in the draft.
All right, how about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Forno? And God, we're getting old because I was like, wait, Jeremiah Trotter, the same Jeremiah Trotter that I know? It's like, oh my God, these guys, and obviously Marvin Harrison Jr.'s kids coming to the draft. So like, we're at the age here. I'm in my early 30s. Miles, I believe you're kind of in the same boat too. So like, we're all in that stretch now where all those kids that we watch, or athletes we watch growing up, their kids are now entering the league basically. But Jeremiah Trotter Jr. kind of sticking on the defensive side, Forno, a linebacker, graded really well the last 2 years at Clemson. What do you like and what do you don't like maybe about Jeremiah Trotter Jr.'s game for the Vikings?
I love everything between the ears, and I don't really love a whole lot else. And that's, for me, the really frustrating part. You can tell that this guy grew up in a football house. You can tell that he's just got a next level understanding of the game, and he's able to read and react and recognize a lot that's going on in front of him. And that really helps maximize his game. The problem is when he's not doing that, or when he has to chase or go sideline to sideline or cover in man coverage, he struggles. He does not have a great athletic profile. He did not run a 40 at the combine, but his 3-cone was paltry. His short shuttle wasn't great. And when you look at some of those metrics and then it matches the film, it tells you this guy's just not a good enough athlete. And he's 6'2", 228. His dad, like you said it pre-show, Declan, he was built like a house, like a 3-story colonial from 1920. Like, when you are that small, you need to be able to have something to justify it. When the Vikings took Brian Asamoah II, and we can talk all day about how that pick hasn't really panned out, but the idea made sense because he weighed 233 pounds, but he was quicker than all get off. And when you have that kind of explosiveness to be able to go sideline to sideline and move forward, like that justifies it. Not everybody can be 250 and run a 4.55. That's just not how the world works. But when you're that small and you can be that quick, it helps. Trotter just doesn't have that, and to me, that drops him down considerably. Right now, he's 62nd on my board of 82 guys that I have fully watched so far. Mid-3rd round grade, and I think that football IQ is going to do him a lot of good. A guy like Josie Jewell made a lot of money in the NFL just being a 1st and 2nd down guy. But we're starting to really transition out of this phase where you need to be able to do a little bit more because people are being a lot more multiple on defense. You're seeing a lot more cover 2 looks, and with cover 2 looks, you have to be able to be quick and consistent in that intermediate level of the field because that's where most of those passes are going now. I don't think Trotter has that athleticism to be able to thrive like that. His own instincts are good, but if you ask him to play man coverage, forget about it. I would be out on him on an overall level, but he has utility.
So, Miles, obviously the Vikings drafted, or I should say got Ivan Pace Jr. in the UDFA portion of the draft last year, and he's undersized, but obviously was a great gem. I'm not saying that Flores targets these undersized guys, but is there a prototype maybe that Flores' defense really likes, where Pace obviously thrived last year? The Vikings are really thin at that position regardless, whether they bring back Jordan Hicks or find some other veteran type of guy. Does Trotter kind of fit the similar mold as Ivan Pace, or are they kind of two completely different players to you?
I think that instinctually there's some similarities there. Obviously Pace plays off instinct, but Pace is such a ramrod bowling ball type of a hitter that I don't think Trotter is. I think Trotter can play. I think his instincts are really strong, and I think he's the kind of guy that you want to get into a system that you can ask him to control a lot of things and make a lot of decisions. But I think Pace can make up with some of his athleticism in some of those areas, and his rush, like Pace for being undersized, is a really good run stuffer. Not run stuffer, but like he could play well in the run if you need him to. Like obviously he can get washed out because of his size, so there are issues there with size in general. But I think Pace just has a little bit more of that like see ball get ball, and I think Trotter has it, but I don't think he's quite as instinctual. Like we know Pace should not have been an undrafted free agent. I think that is obviously clear. But I just think in terms of like what Flores is looking for, I think a read and react type of backer that plays instinctually and explosive the way Pace does, I think he looks for that. I don't know if you want to pair that with Ivan Pace as much as you kind of want you want one of those guys to be that type of player, but I don't know if you need two within your inside linebacker defense, just because I feel like then you're kind of struggling in against the run at that second level probably a little bit more than you'd like to. You'd like to have someone that can kind of help offset a little bit of that more. So I like Trotter. I wouldn't probably take him until, I said day 2, and I think he's probably a day 2 guy. But yeah, I don't know if I see the Vikings taking someone like that early.
Let's go to the offensive side. So actually, I really want to talk about Dylan Laube. So that the Vikings cutting Alexander Madison, I think we talked between the time he has been cut from the Vikings, obviously, but now even PFF has updated their draft board for the Vikings that says obviously running back is a need for them. And there's a ton of free agents that will be out there when free agency obviously opens this week. But at the same time, they could obviously go in the draft route. Forno, does Dylan Laube do anything for you as a prospect to kind of share those snaps with Ty Chandler? Are you kind of out on Dylan Laube? Where does he stand with you?
Dylan Laube played at a high-profile institution where he'd be getting a lot more buzz. Laube is a fascinating guy, and right now he's a member of the All-Forno team, which is just my favorite prospects of the draft. That is the only qualification. And watching him is just fascinating because I asked him this question at the Senior Bowl because I was very intrigued by his play style because he plays a lot in the slot. Dylan Laube is used like people talked about using Christian McCaffrey, where they use him as a legit slot receiver. And against Central Michigan, he caught like 12 passes for like 260 yards or something like that. And we're not talking screens. We're talking real routes. He was dominant in the slot fade. They're asking him to run like digs, hitches. Look, we're talking actual slot routes. So I asked him, like, how did you cross train? That is not something that's normal as far as learning how to play running back and continuing like with those drills. How did you learn that skill set? And he said during spring practice, they're like, look, we know you can play running back. Go learn how to play slot receiver. So he did. And they were able to really maximize his usage and not just use him as a running back, but as a true receiving weapon. And I think that's going to translate to the NFL. He ran, I believe, a 4.5, 4.40, which was, I thought, a great time for him because athleticism was something I really questioned because it's hard to tell how good of an athlete is at the FCS level because not everybody has those kind of fast times. So a guy that looks fast at the FCS level could just be above average once you get to like the Power 5. So seeing those track times really held home for me with what I think his athleticism can be. And I would think he could be a great fit in this offense because I think he can run in zone schemes. He can run in gap schemes. And the utility as both a blocker and as a receiver is something that I think Kevin O'Connell could maximize. Never an alpha, but always a potential 1A or 1B.
So, Miles, I think with KOC's running, game issues to a degree, and Dalvin Cook, had a productive year from a stat side when in his last season with the Vikings, but obviously the explosiveness was lacking. Last season, kind of the Vikings were in the same boat from a running side. Does Dylan Laube, as much as Forno is saying, could be probably a fit in Kevin O'Connell's offense because he can catch passes and they can kind of use him as this gadget type of player, but does it really help your run game? Like, do you think both those guys in Laube and Ty Chandler could be guys that take the rock and are able to at least be productive in the running game? Or is this kind of a guy that fits more of like a Ty Chandler type where it's just this guy can do a lot of things and he's athletic and he's explosive to a degree, but he's not really a straight line runner. And I feel like that's kind of what's been maybe missing in the Vikings running game with Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what the Vikings run game identity wants to be in terms of gap, outside zone, inside zone. They kind of do a little bit of it all, but they're not like truly really good at any of it. And they need to figure out which is their best identity. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a variation, but it's clear that they haven't really had a true identity the last 2 years. I like to hear from Laube that he said he's run both outside zone, he's run zone, and he's run gap, and he preferred gap, and maybe that's more the approach the Vikings end up taking as they go. But I think that's a good thing, because I think a guy that can kind of do a little bit of both is obviously the best case scenario. I agree though with you in the sense that I kind of view him as more of that like third down change of pace type back, and I think that's how he should probably best be utilized. I'm not saying this because they're both white, but like Rex Burkhead is like the first guy that I thought of. Like I view he's like a really good special teams type player. He's a really good change of pace, third down guy, and really reliable in that, like in the New England Patriots offense. I could see Laube being that type of like running back to the next level, and I mean that in the most like honest, sincere way, and like I'm being like positive about that. I'm not trying to say that as a slight. I think Rex Burkhead was a good NFL player. I think he just retired, so we need to replace Rex Burkhead in the league, right? So why can't Dylan Laube be that guy? I think Laube is more explosive than Burkhead was, but I think there's like some similarities. I always question any rookie running back coming in the league and how they're going to be in pass pro. That's always going to be a question for me. But I think the one thing that I saw when I watched him though is there's that willingness. That's always huge for me. It's not that like it's going to be hard at the next level for anybody, but if you have the willingness to do it, that to me is like, that means you're coachable. That means I don't have to worry about you like being unwilling to go neck to neck, toe to toe with a linebacker if you have to, like those types of things. So I like him in that opportunity if the Vikings want to go that route and let Chandler kind of be that 1A to Laube's like 1B, 2 guy in that scenario.
Yeah, the pass blocking is a really good shout, because Ty Chandler was a tremendous pass blocker in North Carolina.
Right.
He's been half a disaster for the Vikings as a pass blocker.
Really
the
bad.
other half's been fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you can't be consistent, how can I trust you?
Right.
Staying on the offensive side here, so Garrett Greenfield out of South Dakota State. I've actually seen a bunch of Purple Daily comments, obviously from here, and people that watch South Dakota State football. What about Garrett Greenfield? So again, a kind of an athletic guy at the combine. Had a big vertical jump. He was able to finish 7th in athleticism score according to NFL.com. They kind of project him as a average backup or special teamer. Forno, I know you said you haven't, I believe, gotten your eyes on Greenfield's tape, but again, is he kind of in the same bin of offensive guards the Vikings could go out and grab that fit what they're trying to do, especially if free agency with these guards like Dotson going back to the Rams or getting paid, Ezra Cleveland, who got paid to stay. Is it a better bet to take a chance on a guy like Greenfield over it is paying an offensive guard on the free agent market?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Greenfield was their left tackle. Mason McCormick, who stood out at the Shrine Bowl and tested really well. He's the neck roll guy. He's the guard. Look, here's the thing about South Dakota State. My wife's an alum. I lived in Fargo for 7 years, so I kind of became a Bison fan by default. And I've seen a lot of South Dakota State football. They are nasty up front, and they are movers of men, and they really made things easy for Isaiah Davis in that running game. I think if you have that kind of athletic profile and you show those kind of traits on tape, I'm going to take a chance on you. This is going to be, ideally, like this is going to be like an Oli Udoh type, a guy you take in round 5, 6, or 7, and you need to have depth on the offensive line that's inexpensive. He's your 8th, 9th, or 10th guy. He's not a guy you want to be first off the bench or second off the bench, but you get him in, you try and develop the traits, you get him into a true NFL strength and conditioning program, because let's just be real, FCS South Dakota State is not as good as those higher end Power 5s, and it's just going to be night and day difference. So you take that time to develop them, and who knows, maybe you can get an Oli Udoh, a Blake Brandel, a guy that you can have come in and play 50 snaps and not be an adjunct disaster. And I think a guy like Greenfield or McCormick, his teammate, those are guys I'd want to bet on to be that type of player.
How about you, Miles? Do you think that instead of overpaying for an offensive lineman, and I know Greenfield was a tackle, but maybe there's a guy who can swing there like Ezra Cleveland, like they did with Ezra Cleveland. Is Greenfield someone that the Vikings should rather go after in like an offensive guard or tackle in the draft, so that way they don't have to like overpay for one in free agency?
Well, I think they need a starter at left guard. They need to go get a starter at left guard and plug that hole, whether it's Reisner coming back or another veteran. They don't have enough people in house to like fill that hole right now. So I think going to the draft, they need to figure that out. I always believe that in that case anyways. You should always try to fill your holes in free agency best you can and not go into the draft with like immediate needs. that doesn't, because that shouldn't sway your decision and your board too much in that way. But at the same time, I wouldn't view him as somebody more than like a day 3 like project type player. And there's my family, but yeah, I wouldn't view him as anything more than like a project, like depth competition type guy. I think day 3, 6th, 7th round, you get a guy like that in here, see what he can do. But I wouldn't. I don't really draft those types of guys with expectations. You hope that they can develop into like an Oli Udo, like Forno said, or even a Blake Brandel. Both those guys kind of niched. Yeah, you carved out really strong roles on this Vikings depth piece, depth and roster. But that's best case scenario for a lot of these guys. So I wouldn't draft him as like a high expectation in that scenario.
All right, Forno. Sam Hartman, Notre Dame quarterback here. I've seen a lot of comments on this one too. And yes, fantastic hair. I love that for him. And Notre Dame quarterbacks always seem to get draft attention because of the school to a degree. But Sam Hartman, does that do anything for you steering clear of that? And whether you're a Vikings fan or a Vikings draft person who wants to go after him, are you with Sam Hartman or are you kind of against Sam Hartman?
Are you drafting him to be a contestant on The Bachelor or are you drafting him to play quarterback?
Yeah, seriously.
It's... Look, the guy has beautiful hair, and by all accords, he's a very interesting human. There's a story that came out because he had some kind of like medical scare a couple years ago when he was with Wake Forest. He actually had a rib removed, and the one of the articles I read on him was that he was going to turn that rib into a necklace. So he's a very eccentric guy, but that he's got an arm that is it's a baby arm. He can't drive the ball, and he was hyper productive. So I think one of the reasons why people like kind of gravitate toward him is because he put up insane numbers at Wake Forest. And then he put up good numbers going to a true pro style system at Notre Dame, because Wake Forest runs like it's called the slow mesh. And if you've never seen it, it's an ugly brand of football that you have RPOs where you have the mesh point where the quarterback holds the ball in the running back's stomach. The slow mesh, it's elongated. So you hold it for like 1 to 3 seconds. And then you decide to either let go or throw it. And it's a very gimmicky offense, but it works. And it especially works at a place like Wake Forest where you're not going to recruit like the high upside echelon athletes that you will at other schools in the area. So you have to try and make up for it. And that's where a gimmicky offense can really help. But he just doesn't have the arm strength. He kind of just likes to run. And doesn't have a ton of juice. He had one play, I think it was in Senior Bowl practice, where he's running and he's wearing the red non-contact jersey, and he just cockily waves at a guy. I'm like, all right, dude, you're wearing a non-contact jersey. That guy's not going to touch you. Like, the second you get into the game, he's going to smoke your butt. So, like, I just thought that was funny. It really doesn't have anything to do with the evaluation, but I'm out. I just don't think he has that any kind of arm strength. And you're right on Notre Dame quarterbacks. But he's also not a traditional Notre Dame quarterback because he's like a 1-year guy because he played in that slow mesh. I would stay completely clear of Sam Hartman. I'm not even going to give him a full scouting report because I've seen so much of him. And I watched him this past summer. If he had arm strength, we could have a conversation, but he doesn't.
Hartman do anything for you, Miles, or is that just you're out on maybe the next Bachelor contestant here in a couple of years?
I don't like scouting helmets. I don't think like it's fair to a player. Like if you're like the guy went to one school, so like he can't be good because of previous players at that school. But to Forner's point, I don't really view him as Notre Dame guy either. It's Wake Forest. That's where you saw most of his tape. But he's an undrafted. Like bring him in and maybe practice squad at best. I just don't see anything more than that.
Yeah, I would probably they shouldn't be drafting Jaron Halls or developmental guys. If they're gonna go get a quarterback, it'll be early. So we'll steer clear of that. I know we've gotten some comments on it, but yeah, that's clearly our extent of Sam Hartman's fit with the Minnesota Vikings. Boys, let's do a mock draft here. Actually, let's do a kind of a brief one. But before we do so, shout out to our friends at Nicolay Law, a new personal injury lawyer, sponsor of Purple Daily. So if you've been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolay. You can go to nicolaylaw.com to get more if you're in the metro in Minnesota. You have probably seen this guy's billboards and his handsome beard and face all over the place. So go to nicolaylaw.com to learn more. All right, boys, let's look at a little bit of mock draft here. I'll pull this up for the YouTube audience. So the Vikings also, their draft picks have been set in stone now. Now that the comp picks have been awarded to other teams, the Vikings don't have a single comp pick. So we all know the Vikings order. We kind of knew it beforehand, but now it's really set in stone. So right now, I believe, fellas, I turned on just a day 1, day 2, so 3-round mock is what I have here. Just a quick little hitter to start us off on this mock draft. I'll also get our theme music here, so we're actually doing the proper things for our mock draft. So I'll start this draft. I'll put it on slow so we can watch it to a degree. So let's start this. All right, let me pause that quick. First 5 picks off the board. Caleb Williams 1, Drake May 2, Marvin Harrison Jr. 3, Cooper DeJean going all the way up to 4. To the Cardinals.
No way.
That is
I like
that's
Cooper
a
DeJean.
reach.
Ain't no way.
I don't even have a first-round grade on Cooper DeJean. Like, that's rich.
They took Pat Pete at pick 5, like, 12 years ago, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Like, Cooper DeJean is not that level of prospects. No offense to him. He's good.
I don't
but he's
know
not
if
that
Cooper
good.
DeJean, you can trust him in man coverage.
I don't think so either.
Malik Neighbors then also going to the Chargers at 5, so a big weapon for Justin Herbert. That'd be
huge
fun to watch.
for the Chargers if they could get one of those receivers at 5.
Okay.
I think that the Mike Williams is gone, so I think Rome Odunze makes a lot of sense over Neighbors, but you can't really argue either of them.
Yeah.
So 6 through 10, Joe Alt to the Giants, Rome Odunze to the Titans at 7, Brock Bowers, another tight end of the Falcons. That wouldn't happen, but also
That's hilarious. I love it.
They're going to go 2 tight ends with 2 athletes.
just 2 freakish tight ends on the field.
Yeah.
That'd be actually hilarious. Then 2 defensive tackles at 9 and 10. So that means with the Vikings on the clock here, they have a chance at one of the quarterbacks of their choice in Jaden Daniels.
Both of these guys are always
JJ.
are always available at the Vikings pick and PFF mocks.
I will say, Trevor Sikkema on the PFF NFL Stock Exchange Draft Podcast, he said that they're changing their algorithms a little bit to be more predictive rather than just go off of his board, which is what it's right now. So if you're looking at his board, I don't think 22 is insane for Daniels. Neither is 28 for McCarthy. They're both probably going top 10 or at very worst top 15. But to have them that low, like on a big board, I understand it. Quarterbacks are always pushed up by need rather than actually, being as good. Like if you want to tell me Byron Murphy II is better than JJ McCarthy, I'm fine with that. I think I have Byron Murphy II ahead of JJ McCarthy on my big board too.
My only question is, are those guys better plus whatever draft capital you would get from a team trying to move up, like the Raiders or the Broncos, Vikings obviously too. Like is Byron Murphy plus, say future second or something better than that player or that, those 2 options like that? Those are always the questions too.
So what do you think, fellas? Should we take one of these 2 quarterbacks? We could move back a couple spots. If one of these 2 guys is here, you got to jump at one of them.
I think it depends on how you want to approach this. Do you want to approach this as trying to be as realistic as possible or our feelings on it? Because if it's realistic, I think it's J.J. McCarthy just because of the traits that Kevin O'Connell looks at in quarterback. I think he's got more of it than Jaden Daniels, and that's not to say Jaden Daniels is a better prospect or a worse prospect. I think McCarthy's a better fit, and the NFL is going to be higher on him than a lot of draft media. I think Jaden Daniels is a better prospect than J.J. McCarthy in a vacuum, and I don't think it's that close. And that's not to say I don't like McCarthy at all. I really do. So it depends on the approach. If we want to go realistic, it's McCarthy. If we want to go what we think is better, I think that answer is Daniels.
Yep.
All right, let's do McCarthy because they obviously like him. They've identified him. So
Yeah,
also,
I feel like obviously Caleb Williams is in a tier of his own, in my opinion, from the league standpoint. But I think it's Drake May and JJ McCarthy for the Vikings in terms of like the next 2 guys that they'd really be high on.
So just taking a look, and some of our YouTube audience should be able to see some of it. We'll explain it for the audio audience. Looking at the other picks, Nate Wiggins goes to the Broncos with the next pick. Jared Verse, who's been mocked to the Vikings a ton, goes to the Seattle Seahawks at pick 16. Dallas Turner to the Rams at 19. Latu to the Eagles.
The Rams getting Turner would just be insane.
Amarius Mims to the Texans. Literally the 2 positions they don't need on that team are tackle and quarterback. Why would you take him?
He's playing guard, I guess.
Oh, I would love a 6'7", 348-pound guard that can move like a freight train.
Tyler Nubin to the Packers. The Gophers safety goes to Green Bay. So
Considering their thresholds,
would be cool. But
I really think that can happen.
yeah.
Dude, Jaden Daniels is still on the board.
I'm a huge Troy Franklin guy, but I would not take Troy Franklin over AD Mitchell. I wouldn't.
Oh, and I'm the opposite. I'm not a Troy Franklin guy. He is wide receiver 11 for me, but AD Mitchell, I have 13th on my board.
That's what I'm saying. I would take AD Mitchell over Troy Franklin. Is what I'm saying. And he went ahead of him here.
So the Patriots did trade Mac Jones on Sunday morning, right? That went through to the Jacksonville Jags. So they do get their quarterback. Jaden Daniels goes all the way down to pick 34.
Can you imagine?
Hey, it happened to Will Levis, so it's not
literally
like
Lamar
insane.
Literally a Lamar Jackson situation to me.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
Bo next to the Giants at pick 39.
That actually makes sense, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anything but to the Vikings. Anything but to the Vikings.
Forno's going to jump off the stage, not in a good way at the draft party if anything like that were to happen with the Vikings.
Listen, I don't know if Phil's okay with expletives, but there will be a lot of them.
All right, so pick 42 here. So the best players on the board, we got edge rushers, defensive linemen. I'm at all right. Yep, I got a bunch of defensive players are available here. The Vikings didn't get any of their picks, obviously, but taking a quarterback. So Chop Robinson's here, who we've been mocked to a lot. Any of these guys stand out that you like more, Forno?
Well, I'll say this, and I'm probably going to end up the highest in the industry on Chop Robinson. He is the fourth player on my board, and that's not going to change. I just finished Joe Alton Olufushanu this weekend. He is phenomenal, and there's some issues in the run game, and I think some of that just has to do with he needs to play with more play strength. He needs to get a little bit more strength, but he's so disruptive with how quick he is and how he can penetrate. There are some plays on GT counter where he can just, and for those who don't know, GT counter just means guard and tackle are the ones that are pulling. He's disrupting and completely bypassing the pullers and just blowing up the play before it can even start. Like, that is still winning in the running game. So he needs to develop some of that, but I just think he's so special on getting off on the edge. I like Kamari Lassiter.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
He's a solid corner. He doesn't have like a ton of speed, but he's my 6th ranked corner. I think this is like the perfect spot for him. Darius Robinson is a phenomenal player too. Like, this is a really good spot for the Vikings. If you could actually trade down like 4 or 5 picks, I think you could still end up with a really good football player. Personally, I would be standing on the table with the sledgehammer pounding it for Chop Robinson.
Yeah, I would go Chop here too, but like you said, the Kamari Lassiter, like he's like probably the best, one of, if not the best tackling corner in this draft. Like, give me that type of player in this system. I'm all about the aggression, that the guys that have that alpha mentality at corner. But yeah, I think Chop Robinson would be like in pen. Like, I wouldn't even like hesitate.
Yeah. And Declan, since we have a 3-round mock, what I think we should end up doing is pausing around pick 85 or 90 and start looking at the board and deciding if we want to trade up.
Yeah.
Day 3 in this draft class sucks compared to previous years because there's like 50 less underclassmen that declared, and that just weakens your draft class. So with the Vikings having pick 107, you package that with a 5th round pick or maybe 2 4ths, and you can make a significant jump to get a much better player.
Yep.
All right, so we'll let the board kind of play out here through round 2, and then once we enter round 3, we will. I'll pause it when we get to round 3 at least, and then we can at least see who's on the board to start the round, and if we want to make a trade to go up, we certainly can. So round 2 wraps up. I'll pause the draft here. Let's see. Can I see who's on the board? Can I not see who's on the board? I definitely don't want to do that.
There's a way you can.
Is there a way to? I've always tried, but it was always hard to do.
There's gotta be a way. Select a player. No, I don't want to trade for Bryce Young.
I don't think you can.
All right, so let's do this then. We'll blindly assume, like in the middle of the round here. I'll wait till like pick 76 because we're not going to trade with the Bears.
There's some good players coming off the board.
All right, let's pause here. We'll potentially get in at 76 with the Broncos. Here's some of the guys.
Going to 71. Like, that'd be a target I would have loved just to consider.
Absolutely. Spencer
I don't know enough about
the Falcons.
Brandon Dorless. You watch Dorless yet?
Dorless is weird. I don't know what he wants to be because he was like a 285, 290 pound 3 technique that they threw on the edge, and he was incredibly effective, utilized his power extremely well. But then he trimmed down to like 270 for the Senior Bowl. And it's like, dude, you're not a traditional edge, and that's okay. You should be a 5
like, I was going to say 5 tech. Yeah.
He should be a 5 tech. And I think he'd be incredibly disruptive at that, but you could still stand him up and play him off the edge. Like Darius Robinson, 286 pounds. His best winning percentage in the pass rush was out of like a wide 9. And like, it's okay to be a bigger dude on the edge, but the fact that he trimmed down just to be an edge, I thought was a really big mistake because that's not how he wins.
Yeah.
All right, so get up to get up to 76 from 107. This potential trade has only a 66% chance to be accepted, but it would be your 107, your 128, your 156 in this year's draft plus next year's 4th. And it has only about a 66% chance, so it's better than a coin flip, but not.
You're
much
giving
better.
up too much to move up
I'd
30
wait 10
spots, in my
picks.
opinion. Yeah.
If
you want to wait 10
drop
picks,
like I need to look it up. I can't remember what the Vikings got last year for was it the 85th overall pick
when they moved back with and they took what's his face?
The Vikings
Blackman.
got 102, 164, and 222. So 4th, 5th, and a 7th to go back from 87 to 102. So 15 spots. So right here would kind of be the sweet spot.
Okay.
107 and 128 might do it.
7% chance. Yeah. If we give them the 156, definitely in. If we give them next year's 5th, about a 70% chance. If we gave them next year's 4th, it will be definitely in.
Throw in, make it 176. See if that'll make it work.
It does.
There we go.
80%. So yeah, should be able to get this done.
Yeah, and you know what? These day 3 picks this year are not great. If the Vikings have more cap space,
did it not go through? Didn't want to go through. I think they declined it.
I think you hit resume draft instead of offer trade.
F. Well, that's
so
what
here
happened.
we'll just trade with pick 90.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and then
offer the future. Do like
there
the future
go.
5 or
that's perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect right there. You don't even need to. 96% chance.
Offer trade.
Go up 17 spots.
Classic Mike Tice. I fumbled the draft there a little bit with the clock, but
I mean, there's Trotter as we talk about it. I'm not saying we gotta take him here, but like he fits in that spot, that range to me. Like
we mentioned Mason McCormick in passing when talking about South Dakota State earlier.
Jerry and Jones is a guy that like those Florida State corners are really solid.
I feel like we should go defense, right? I feel like
Always.
you should definitely like taking Bucky Irving wouldn't be worth it here.
I'm going to be honest. I'd take Bucky Irving in a heartbeat, but I'm very high on Bucky Irving and I don't care about the weight. The athleticism concerns are real, but he's so weird because on tape, he was really twitchy and athletic. And then for him not to test well was baffling to me and a lot of other people. So I'm going to stick with the film and just maybe you don't take him in round 3, but God, I loved his game so much.
So should we take Trotter if we talked about him, or is this still too scary for you guys with him maybe not living up to his prospect grade?
Let's scroll down a little more and then kind of see who else is on the board.
What receivers are available too? This would be a position I think receiver could be. Like they need a third receiver.
Let's take a look.
Like Jacob Cowing's good. Javon Baker's a really good player. I like him a lot.
I don't like Baker.
I like him in this range. I think he's like that 4th. Maybe this is slightly early, but like his end of the 3rd round.
It's weird because like people are saying like, oh, Baker's my sleeper, and I'm like, really? To me, I saw he was like, if Jamar Chase played at 75% speed, and like only gave 75% effort, because like I really worried about that vertical speed with how he wants to win.
I think he's a good route runner though, and I think he creates good separation in my opinion. I think that's huge. But yeah, I'm not saying we have to take him. I'm just saying I like this range is an area I'd hate to take him.
It's more I know that I'm the outlier on him, and I just find it weird that so many people are seeing X, Y, and Z, and I just don't.
So there's a lot of safeties available. That would be also not
safety, especially with where this safety free agent class is, and obviously we're doing this show before the legal tampering period starts. This free agent class of safety is bonkers. Like there were $104 million in 2024 salary cut at the safety position, 39 more than any other position. That was as of I think Saturday morning. Like it's bonkers how
Fire
deep
just
the
went to
safety
the
class
Bears
is.
too, but
Man, the Bears overpaying for players. What a wonderful tradition.
At least it wasn't like, I mean, I like Byard still. I think he's still a good player. I think they're paying for who he used to be, but it's not like they gave him some crazy deal that they can't, like, that'll kill them. They still have a lot of cap space to deal with.
I just think Byard's athletically washed. And yeah, it sounds mean to say, but that's just kind of the reality of what happens in the National Football League.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he fits into them. I mean, Jerry and Jones is more of like a nickel type, but if you're not going, like, if we talk safety, I would need to be like a versatile safety, like someone that, you know, that can.
The Texas Tech kid would fit that bill.
Right.
I never remember how to say his name because it's that hyphenated one. Taylor Demerson.
Dadrian?
Yeah.
Adrian.
Oh, it's the last name that I always forget how it's structured.
Taylor Demerson? Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen a little bit. I don't know enough about him to like have a true opinion on him though.
It feels like we're kind of split here. So
I know.
I really consider Mason McCormick.
I'm open to whatever here. Like go ahead. Like I haven't watched enough McCormick to say that I like him. But right I'm all for depth though. Interior depth competition. Like they
right now the Vikings have 4 offensive linemen on the roster. Yeah. Like
is that really true?
Linemen. Well, Blake Brandel hasn't re-signed. He's a restricted free agent. Oli Udoh, David Quessenberry, free agents.
Yep.
And Hakeem Adeniji, no. Austin Schlottman, free agent. They're bare bones right now. And I mean, that's fine. You need to find one starter and a bunch of backups, most of whom would probably come back anyways.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, Max Melton was open. I would have taken him too. I like Melton. I think he's solid. But I'm good with McCormick.
Not a bad little grade here for this 3-round mock. A B+ grade of McCarthy, an A grade for Chop, and an A- grade for McCormick. So an overall draft grade of those 3 picks.
Forno, where are you playing McCormick? You think he's just like you don't think is he a plug and play like left guard?
Well, he played left guard at South Dakota State.
Yeah.
So.
I know. I'm just asking if he's like a plug and play, like you put him there and like expect him to start, or like at least have a competition for him to start.
I'd look at 2022 with Ed Ingram. They gave Ingram the opportunity to win the starting job, and he did. I would do the same thing with McCormick. Like, dude's got a neck roll. I want to bet on that guy. Like,
was he a wrestler? Was he a wrestler? That's always key.
Oh, you know what? It wouldn't shock me at all. But like, when you have that old school aesthetic, I just want to bet on you. And the film is good. The talent is there. And I'm excited to really dive in depth with him because I'm going to try and get to him when I'm doing my offensive line bid, which I am right now. Good football player. And I'd give him a chance to win the job, but I wouldn't count on it.
Well, there you use Purple Daily on draft right there. We were able to break down some prospects. We did a mock draft as well. And yeah, stay tuned right here on Purple Daily for anything breaking news related. We'll be locked and loaded, ready to go. So hit that subscribe button. Daily Vikings Entertainment. Big week here in the NFL and at Purple Daily. We'll see you guys next Monday.